try that again. Good evening and welcome to the Gold, Goats, and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. My name's Tom Luongo. Got a lot to talk about. Tonight I want to talk about Angela Merkel, Donald Trump, the EU. I don't know. What else are we going to talk about? So, I've got an article up on my blog over at goldgoatsandguns.com right now talking about Angela Merkel's growing problem within her own party. Sorry, I apologize. I'm a little fires in the wrong spot and all that stuff going on behind the scenes. Merkel, not in a good position in Germany right now. Last week, she ran into a buzzsaw at the CDU party conference. One of her candidates was voted down internally, and this never happens. This kind of thing never happens to a German chancellor, sitting German chancellor. It just hasn't happened. And I was watching a thing with Alexander Mercouris over at the Durin, and he said it hasn't happened since 1973. Right? So good evening, everybody who showed up. I'm just going to continue ranting. So, thinking about that, it really got me thinking about it this morning. We have somebody from Sweden here. That's very cool. Good evening, Nicholas. How are you? What happened to Merkel, it just got me thinking. I'm like, Merkel has an internal issue within her own party. She's already had to survive a challenge from sister party leader, former CSU leader, Horst Seehofer, who resigned in losing his battle with Merkel earlier in the year. The polls are moving against her. The polls are moving against all the major parties in Germany. Both the Social Democrats and the CDU are getting hammered. And when you back the CSU numbers out of the current polling for the union between the two of them, Merkel's party is only polling at around 22%. So she's got as strong an electoral mandate at this point as the guys in Spain. I mean, Salvini and Di Maio in Italy have a far bigger electoral mandate than Merkel does currently in Germany. And that just screams political and financial instability all across the Eurozone. I mean, look, the Eurozone is literally a dead financial system walking. I mean, the whole Western financial system, actually the whole world financial system broke in 2008. And we've just been kind of running on fumes ever since. And it's simply not fixable. And I think everybody knows it's not fixable. But the thing about it, even if the thing isn't fixable, thank you, Nicholas. And even the thing's not fixable, right? It's at some point the illusion's going to drop and everybody's going to go, yeah, it's not fixable. Right now, it's all kind of just running. The whole thing just feels like we're all Wile E. Coyote and we're just running along chasing after the Roadrunner. And we haven't realized yet that there ain't nothing below us. And what used to be below us was confidence in the financial markets and confidence in the political institutions. And all those political institutions are breaking apart. Watching the Brett Kavanaugh thing here in the United States has me convinced that, well, I'm glad you're here for the first time on the live show, has me convinced, this Brett Kavanaugh circus has me convinced that those who to this point, who have wielded power in the United States don't care anymore whether or not they're outed as being the evil oligarchs that they are. They don't care. They're in burn it all down mode. They're in, we're going to tear this thing to pieces and get rid of Trump by hook or crook or hell or high water. And we don't care what damage we do in the process. They're not asking the question, what happens next? What comes after Trump? Lindsey Graham did the other day. I mean, that was the most salient part about his rant during the Kavanaugh testimony, was that he said, look, do you understand how little anybody of character is going to want to come and be a part of this process? There's nothing left. There's no humanity left. There's no decency left. There's not even a good, honest, like, you're not even making a good, honest show of it anymore. You just rip the mask off and you're just all snidely whiplash, just trying to get what you can before the whole thing collapses. And it's just really disgusting. Good evening, Buckman. How are you? So, for those of you new who are, I will be responding to both people on Periscope and YouTube at the same time. So it's just fascinating watching how this is playing out, because to me it's otherworldly how they don't. It's almost like they're at that point where they don't care if the system crashes, and say that, well, if it crashes, if we're going to be taken down, we're taking everybody with us. And it's really, truly mutually assured destruction at a certain level, at the kind of political level, not at the lob and nuclear weapons level, because I don't think it's going to come to nuclear weapons getting lobbed by anybody. But I can tell you that, smarmy little dirt bags like Bill fucking Crystal will do anything and everything to not give up their dreams of destroying their political enemies. That guy is the weakest little sniveling little sack of fucking shit I have ever seen in my life. He truly is one of the most venal and reprehensible people on this planet. He is the face of evil in this world. One of them. There's many others, but Bill Crystal particularly gets my goat, because he's a man who doesn't actually wield any real power, but he actually wields power. And when he doesn't have when things don't go his way, he just starts crying and whining to everybody behind the scenes. And it's truly disgusting how much that guy and people like him refuse to give up, because it's that mindset of, well, I don't care if I lost. I'm going to figure out how to destroy you anyway. They have an unquenchable envy for anybody who beats them at any level. And when you watch a guy like Trump, he's really hard to make any, to get a good handle on, because Donald Trump doesn't ever want you to know exactly what's going on. It's just part of Trump's method, and it's part of his madness. And it's something I appreciate in Trump. But at the same time, it's maddening trying to figure out what the hell he's actually trying to do. So when you factor all that in, and then you start looking at what's happening with Merkel and all of the stuff that's happening in the EU, and you just say to yourself, how do we survive any of this? How does the current political order survive any of this? All right, that's, Bill Crystal of the Weekly Standard. This is like arch neocon. It's like, honestly, if Bill Crystal and Paul Wolfowitz had a baby, his name would be John Bolton. So it truly is that moment where the United States political process is destroying our ability to have any effect on geopolitical events of any nature other than lobbing missiles at third world countries, lobbing financial terror and inflicting financial terror on anybody who says no, while everybody else tries to figure out how they can just get away from all this. Then you go one step further and realize that the EU is built on exactly the same model, with almost exactly the same people. The only difference is their accents. I mean, is there really that? When you start to substitute when you start to do the substitution, you got like Donald Tusk, and then you got like, I don't know, Chuck Schumer, and you got Juncker, and you got, I don't know, Mitch McConnell, and you got Merkel, and you got Dianne Feinstein. I mean, is it really any different? I mean, these people are just, that's just who they are. So, whenever I think Billy, you're thinking Billy. No, we're not talking about Give me a nice paper cup, pour lemon juice on it. We're closed. We're not talking about that guy. We're talking about Bill Kristol, the guy who runs the Weekly Standard and would cry on Morning Joe who cried on Morning Joe after Trump got elected. I think that was the best part of Trump getting elected, was watching Bill Kristol cry. I mean, honestly, I think that was the best thing ever. And then we have Kanye West completely refusing to not throw stink bombs everywhere into the middle of Libtown. I mean, how awesome is Kanye West? Guys, how awesome is Kanye West? Because all of this chaos, all of it, as I was saying this afternoon on the video I made this afternoon, all of it is making the markets really nervous. I mean, as bad as German politics have been, and as gray and uninteresting, as uninteresting as German politics has been for so long, at least they were boring. Boring is good for investors. Investors like boring. They like Switzerland. Yeah, I know. He's refusing to stop throwing stink bombs into Libtown, is what I mean. Yeah. It's great. Hungary is already forming that new Eastern Bloc of the old Visegrad countries, and they've got Italy on their side. This is it's almost like it almost bothers me that the Brits voted for Brexit, because if the Brits were still in the European Parliament, and they were led by Nigel, and that contingency was led by Nigel Farage, and then you had Farage, Salvini, and Orban. Dude, that's like the three horsemen of the EU apocalypse. It's freaking amazing. I don't think Turkey's going to break. I think I told you last month, or a few weeks ago, that when the Turkish lira hit Goldman's target of 7.1, that most of the crisis was over, and that every day that it didn't get worse and we didn't break 7.1 from the ratio of the lira to the dollar, that it wasn't going to go anywhere. And guess what? The lira ended the quarter under 6. So it's only going to get easier for Turkey from here on out, financially. It's all about, when you get maximum headlines like that, that's when max pain hits. I didn't have the balls to officially put on, to say, hey, we should put on a long position in the Turkish ETF, but if I had, it'd be up some cash right now. The Rocket Man asks a very interesting question, which is germane to my main point for the evening, which is, what happens if another German election occurred today and Merkel's coalition no longer holding the majority in the polls? That's the problem. She actually still does hold the majority in the polls. The problem is that as these major parties break down, no other one party is getting the spillover, is getting the spoils, right? We're not having, so as the SPD falls in support, the Greens are rising. Der Linke rose. So Der Linke is at like 9%. The Greens are up to 15%. Now that all of that is just pissed off SPD voters moving over to the Greens and Der Linke. The same thing's happening with the CSU and the CDU. As they fall, a lot of those voters are moving over to AFD and to a smaller most of them moving over to AFD, Alternative for Germany, and some are moving over to the Free Democrats. But for the most part, and this is part of the reason why the AFD hasn't pushed much beyond that 16% chasm. They're starting to pull around 17, 18%. They need to make it into the low 20s. And if they have a really good showing in Bavaria, which it doesn't look like they're going to have, unless the polls I saw from last month are not good, because actually what's happening in Bavaria was interesting. The poll I saw this morning that was about from last month has the CSU down to 35%, the Greens at 15%, and AFD at 11%. I'm not sure how much I believe that poll, but I have no reason to really disbelieve it. And certainly it tops out AFD at no more than 13 to 14%. Right, you can see Merkel making a deal with the Greens, no problem, right? But she can't make a deal with the Greens. That's not big enough, right? That's still only, 28 and 15 is still only 43%. It's not enough to put together the Bundestag. They'd still be in the same kind of Jamaica coalition that failed earlier in the year, where they get the Free Democrats with Christian Lindner, the Greens, and the Union Party. And that's what they were trying to do, and it didn't work. And Jamaica is because of the three colors of the flag of Jamaica. So that coalition couldn't make that work. So they had to go back to the Social Democrats, which of course was organized behind the scene by the powers that be. So that's the situation there. Okay. So we take all that, right, and we take it one step further. There can't be a new parliamentary election now. It's got to be later. Now, the other thing is, the polls may be the way they are. The polls may be the way they are right now simply because no one's really interested, right? And once new elections were called, I would firmly expect to see things change. Macron's approval rating is terrible. I haven't seen a new number recently, and they've been really scarce about getting polling numbers out in Europe because they know they're terrible, so they're not polling anybody. So it's really, I don't know. I think we easily see the polls maybe shift 3 to 5 points in one direction or the other if Merkel were to be ousted. And the problem now is how much of AFD's support how much of AFD's support is an anti-Merkel vote? And if Merkel was removed from power, how many former CDU voters would leave Alternative for Germany and move back to the CDU, much the way that Tories who were pissed off and went to UKIP during Brexit left the minute that Brexit was done, and went back to the Tories. It's like, okay, fine, we voted for Brexit, now you guys manage it, which was the wrong answer, by the way. It's the wrong thing for them to do. And it was wrong for Nigel Farage to step down as head of UKIP because he left the work only half done. Yeah, I did see that thing with Macron. I think it's really funny, and I don't think Macron lasts another, I don't know. We'll see what happens. The French electoral system is a mess, and he could stay in power. I mean, Hollande stayed in power with a 9% approval rating all the way to the end of his term. So, all right. And brain cramps, I'll get to your answer. I'll get to your question in a little bit. I want to finish up on this. What you have to understand is that Italy is like poking the snake here. Oh, Italy knows Merkel is wounded. They're like going after the EU, with both barrels. I mean, they've got the auto drum shotgun, and they're just firing off blasts left and right. It's awesome, right? Yeah, it was terrible. Hollande's approval rating was like 9% when he left office. It was bad. It was so bad that they had to, in order to get a globalist through, Macron had to split off from Hollande's socialists and make a new party, and that's who they voted for. That's why, and he was repackaged as the new guy, even though it's meet the new boss, same as the old boss, right? So, and the same thing's going on with Poroshenko in Ukraine. We're trying to foment a provocation between Ukraine and Russia before Poroshenko's voted out of office next year, because that's what's happening, and Russia's just not going to respond meaningfully to any provocation, knowing full well that they'll have a much more rational government to deal with in less than a year, next few months actually. QQQ Trader asks, what is the U.S. stock market going to do in 2019, and are Trump's tariffs helping the U.S.? First one is easy. It'll go up. And the reason it's going to go up is that if there's a sovereign debt crisis in Europe and there's political upheaval here in the United States as opposition to Trump continues to try and undermine the validity of the political structure here in the United States, that's going to make bond traders antsy. And if the Fed continues to raise into a not a great recovery, as much as the headline GDP number looks good and everything else, I'm not convinced about this recovery. Jeff Snyder at Alhambra Partners keeps banging his shoe on the table saying, look, wages aren't rising. Job openings are high, but hires are not rising. So it's not a real recovery. It's not. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things happening that you can goose GDP, but it's not. But GDP is gross national spending. It's not quality of spending. So, but the fundamental thesis is as follows. If there's a sovereign debt crisis in Europe and we enter into a 1930-style sovereign debt crisis like we saw in the run-up to World War II, which is what ultimately created World War II, if that's what we're dealing with, which is what I think is happening, or going to happen, what's brewing, then you're going to see a rotation out of debt as the safe haven asset. The definition of safe haven assets will shift from gold and bonds to gold and stocks and commodities, just like it always does when faith in governmental institutions fails. The last gold bull market, for those of you who have not been reading my blog, the last gold bull market was primed to go for 2 years before it finally took off. It was sitting there waiting. It made a bottom in 1999. It made a slightly higher low in 2000. It sat there in 2001, capped at $340 an ounce, could not move past 340 to save its life, could not move past 340, could not move past 340. 9/11 happens. Greenspan drops interest rates. Everybody freaks out, and gold breaks out late in 2001 and into 2002, and is off to the races for the next decade. It takes a crisis of faith of the political institutions to get retail off their ass and change the definition of what they think is a safe haven asset. They move their money into gold, stocks, and real estate because of ultra low interest rates. It's not going to be real estate this time around because they're going to raise interest rates into this, which is what they're doing. Rates are going to rise here as bonds are sold. And we're going to see bond yields rise rapidly. Look at what's going on in Italian bonds. Go look at even German bonds, for Christ's sake. With knowing that the ECB has still got this massive QE program going on. But they can't keep the Italian bonds under control anymore. And a part of me thinks at this point that the ECB and the EU are trying not to keep them under control. They're actually going to allow. They think that they're dumb enough to believe that they can intimidate the Italians into giving them a budget that they want if it's the EU, that is, the Troika, if they allow bond yields to rise and they scare the Italian banks. Got news for you. All the Italian banks are bankrupt anyway. The only person you're scaring are the people holding the Target 2 liabilities, namely Germany. Now, if Merkel is deposed from power in the next couple of months, there's nobody in Germany who has the political clout that she does to run the EU. There's nobody behind her to run Germany. And anybody who comes up behind her, no matter what party it's from, is going to be less of a globalist and more of a nationalist. And meaning they're going to be hardline with Italy on any negotiations. No bailouts, no this, no that. We're going to bail in all your savers. We're going to take all your money. We're going to do all of it. We're going to just, no. And if necessary, we'll leave the EU, we'll leave the Euro, or we'll force you guys out. That's what's coming if Merkel is ousted from power, which is part of the reason why Merkel is still in power. So the main beneficiary from the chaos of Europe will be the United States. Our bond yields will rise a little slower than everybody else's because there'll be a lot of rotation into U.S. debt. But the big one is that it's going to be people moving into stocks. You're going to see people rebalance their portfolios into stocks. You're going to see Edward Jones, which all they do is sell bond funds, those guys. They're going to be in real trouble because people are going to be closing their accounts left and right and opening up accounts with Morgan Stanley. And whatever, and they're gonna be buying stocks left and right. Uli Kunkel, the nihilist, will run Germany. Buckman, we should just stick to gold, goats, and guns. But you like the Dow, Tillman, at 30K? Silly human. Try 40. There'll be a nice rotation into there when you start looking at IPOs in this environment. Really? During a sovereign debt crisis, IPOs? No. Well, you'll see. Well, maybe you'll see a lot of European capital flow into the United States. Yeah, there may be a lot of investment money come in, and just looking for something to invest in. There could be a lot of it could be a lot of that stuff. That's possible. You could see a lot of that. You could see a lot of that. So. That's possible, but you're going to see a lot of capital move into the United States, and you're going to see you may see secondary real estate markets do really well. Secondary, tertiary real estate markets do really well because the primary markets are already way overvalued. That's all been bought up by Chinese capital flight and all the rest of it, like San Francisco and New York and Miami and whatnot. But secondary and tertiary markets still do really well. I fully expect, and there will be as well an internal rotation. And migration within the United States are based around Trump's tax plans. We're already seeing that happen. In your opinion, how will Bitcoin do in a recession versus a monetary crisis? Bitcoin's going to do just fine as a safe haven asset. Oh, I forgot to mention. Cryptos will do well as well. I consider cryptos, and certainly the hard cryptos, I consider them really no different than gold. They're just digital versions of gold. Why do we have these geopolitical tensions? Is it all just due to pipelines and petrodollars? It's more than that, but it's a lot of it. That's a lot of it, and a lot of it is old generational biases, right? And a lot of it is still still fighting the Cold War. Some of it is racial. Some of it is racial stuff. Sorry, but there's a lot of animosity between various sects of Jews in Israel and Russians and these, and there's a lot of that. And it's secondary. The big stuff is it's all about money. It always is. And it's about maintaining power. But energy matters. And the Rothschilds. I'll keep the Rothschilds under a minimum. Where are you in Florida, Buck? I saw your note earlier. I just was in the middle of too much ranting, so I'll get back to you now. Because if you're here, yeah. Welcome to the 9th circle of hell, dude. Oh yeah, everything you hear tonight. I am not an investment advisor. I'm just some asshole on the internet with an opinion, and everybody on the internet has an opinion. So everything you hear tonight that cannot be construed as investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell securities. I am just a guy with an opinion. It's presented for informational purposes only. Do your own due diligence. Speak to your financial planner. Yada, yada, yada. SEC disclaimer off. How much longer will Putin be in power since he's 65? Well, he just got reelected for another 6-year term. He's in the best shape of any world leader there is. The man still works out daily. He still swims daily. He still does judo. Putin, he doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. Putin will live forever. Oh, Orlando's terrible. Where I am is worse, by the way. Just so you know. I live in the 9th circle of hell. Do you have time to come on up and visit? Or are you stuck down in Orlando? Excuse me while I, interrupt this stream to try and, have a social life. Oh God, you're in. I know where you are. Ugh. Talking to Tillman, that is. Ugh. That's bad too, down there. It's just hot. Inland Florida in the summertime is just miserable. Putin's an 8th dan in judo. He does more than practice. Got a bad hip though, so you should look up some of the YouTube videos of Putin doing judo, practicing with the Russian national team. Ugh. like, you know, just it's the 10th. Well, in the 10th circle of hell, sure, Sandy. From a political perspective, it's certainly the 10th circle of hell. As far as heat's concerned, though, a friend of mine says, you know, I live in South Florida and I've been all over this crazy freaking world, and I can tell you that, you know, I've been to the jungles of Malaysia, I've been to Africa, I've been this place, I've been that place. There ain't no freaking place hotter on this planet than North Florida, where you live. I'm like, it's like, dude, you live in the world's worst place to live. I'm like, it's the lightning capital of the world. It's triple 90s for 6 months out of the year. Yeah, it's 80 degrees at 7:30 in the morning in the summertime. Yeah, it's, you know, 85 degrees and 95% humidity. I wouldn't. I'll take 54 degrees all year long, all day long. I am still a transplanted New Yorker at heart. I still would rather it be cold and hot. All right, let's get back on target. Can we expect hyperinflation in the U.S.? When will happen then? Hyperinflation, probably no, but certainly very ugly stagflation starting now and going for the next few years. There may be a breakdown of the U.S. dollar standard, and if there is, it'll be ugly. We'll see. I mean, it depends on what your definition of hyperinflation is, right? Okay, I don't consider a move in gold from, say, $1,300 an ounce to $7,000 an ounce hyperinflation. Not unless it happens like overnight. You know, kind of like 1933. See, we've already had a hyperinflation in the United States. So nobody talks about this. Even Martin Armstrong doesn't talk about this. He refuses to even discuss this in these terms. So the United States one day was converting gold to $20 an ounce, and then the next day it was trading at $35 an ounce, thanks to FDR. So that's a 75% devaluation in one day. Annualized, that's like 12,000% inflation. Yeah, well, it's going to get colder for you. I know you live in. Okay, so I live in the 9th circle of hell. You live in, what's the opposite of hell? Buffalo, right? Southern Ontario, Buffalo area, Niagara. Hundreds of inches of snow a year, negative temperatures. Will the dollar ever be backed by gold again? No. No. I think I'd rather live in Moscow than live in Buffalo, to be honest with you. At least Moscow's honest. It's always cold, right? Buffalo will you know, teases you during the summertime. Oh, Winnipeg's cold. It takes stern stuff to live in Saskatchewan. That's why there's not very many people there. Has the price mechanism played out its role? They say the horse race is rigged with HFTs and getting paranoid with even big futures. Is that justified? In an era of central banks, Nicholas, and where the central bank is dominant, the pricing system doesn't work properly. But eventually, prices will. That's what the sovereign debt crisis will be. It will be the real great reset or the great reckoning. The day what the Agora guys call the day of reckoning, like the Doug Casey guys, and what the Austrians will call the crack up boom, which is what me, right? I'm an Austrian economist, libertarian Austrian economist. I'll call it the crack up boom. But with all of that, right? When they're in charge of everything, it doesn't matter. Every time you intervene in the marketplace, at some point, someone every time will eventually call bullshit on it. One day, Toto will jump behind the curtain, pull on the wizard's pant leg, and they'll pull back the curtain, and that'll be the end of it. They'll peek behind the curtain, and oh look, there's just some dude, you know, pulling levers and screeching into a microphone. And at that point, everything crashes. Will you think our banksters will use the bail-in laws? No, they won't do it here, but they certainly will do it in Europe. So I think pricing will work. Again, it's just because there comes a limit where you can't print more money and prop up asset values. It takes too much debt to keep asset values propped up. You issue $14 or $20 or $30 worth of debt to keep asset prices propped up. Eventually, everybody just the whole thing just face plants. Eventually, you hit the limit. You hit debt saturation, the point where people don't believe that you'll ever pay it. You can ever pay it off, and when that happens, and the liquidity dries up in the system, the whole thing has to collapse. So if interest rates are going up, then we have a recession coming. In the United States, yes, but not for a while. Thoughts on Peter Schiff? He's okay. I wish his talking points would have evolved past 2007. But, all right. He's not nearly as nuanced as I am. I've met Peter Schiff. I mean, his heart's in the right place, but he's a good businessman. But he's been wrong for 10 years. At least I had the good sense after 5 to go, okay, I was wrong. This thing's going to be, it's going to be different. Something else is going to be different. A repeat of 2008 is not coming in real estate in the United States. Something different is coming. Every Austrian is like myself and or proto-Austrian like Jim Rickards and Martin Armstrong and everybody associated understands what's happening. The question is when, and no one really knows when. Even Martin Armstrong, I don't think, knows when. Okay. What's different this time is that they never fixed 2008. Because they never fixed anything in 2008, they didn't fix the financial system. They just papered everything over and bailed out the banks. The next problem is going to be an order of magnitude bigger. And that means it'll be bigger than the central banks. Who could possibly beat Trump from the non-corporate left? No one. I think everybody who wants a good primer on Austrian economics should read Gene Callahan's Economics for Real People. I'll type it in the thing. It is, I think, one of the best introductions to basic Austrian economics that anyone has ever written. It's really, really good. I own a copy of it. I haven't read it in years. It's really, really good. It explains everything from starting with the Robinson Crusoe economy all the way through to the end of the Austrian business cycle within a couple of hundred pages. It's very easy. It's a very easy read. Hayek is a great read too, but Hayek is a dense read. I'm talking about something for laymen that don't have that kind of background. Hayek was an academic. So was Mises. Those guys are a lot harder to read. Anything by Murray Rothbard is infinitely more readable than either Mises or Hayek. I think you start with Callahan's book. Maybe you read Harry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson as well. And then you move up to, and then, move into Rothbard. And then you can start looking at things like Man, Economy, and State, Human Action, Socialism, yada, yada, and all those other things. And they're all available for free at the Mises Institute's website. You can go to Mises.org and get all this stuff for free. They have PDFs. They got Kindle versions of them. They're all right there. They don't care. All that stuff's for free. They've never made more money than when they made their entire book catalog free. By the way, Jeff Tucker talked about this before he went off the deep end. He used to talk when he was in charge of that, and he was in charge of the opening up of the Mises library and getting copyrights to all the books and putting them up and having them back in print, and then having them available as PDFs and audiobooks and all of it. You can get them in any version you want, and they're all free. And then you can also buy a physical copy of them if you want. And they've never made more money than when they made them free. And it was Jeff Tucker was in charge of that when he was working for the Mises Institute before he went crazy and went back to the left. Bitcoin standard would be fine with me. What's the highest possible chance of Democrats winning the House? 35%. Last week I would have said 40. Do you think the U.S. should get rid of minority privileges, and what percentage are you considered a certain minority? I think all quota systems are dumb. I'm a libertarian. I think you leave people to associate based on whatever it is that they want to, however it is they want to associate on. And if they decide they want to be racist, well, then let them be racist. If they want to hire people, they want to hire, goat fucking transsexual midgets, great. If he's the best guy for the job, fantastic. I don't care. Yeah, Schiff's timing is always off because he's not thinking in terms of timing. And he's got the same message week in and week out and year in and year out. And that's why I have a problem with Peter Schiff. I have a problem with Peter Schiff, the businessman. I don't have a problem with Peter Schiff, the economic philosopher. You understand? That's the fundamental difference. I try to give it to you as best as I understand it from a timing perspective and everything else. I'm telling you what I think is going to happen. I'm giving you the best information that I can, reading the tea leaves as best as I can, looking at all sides of, trying to look at as many sides of the situation as possible. Not saying that I'm great or anything, but I've been saying for 2 years that gold isn't ready to break out. Even though I'm telling people, hey, buy gold on pullbacks. Average into a long-term position. At the end of the month, buy gold. If you've been buying gold at the end of on the last day of the month of every of the entire gold bear market, you'd be in it somewhere around, I don't know, somewhere around $12.80 an ounce at this point. Average price. You'd have bought some at $1,600, you bought some at $1,000, you bought some at $1,100. You've been around $12.80 or so. You'd be off what? $50? $80? Gives a shit. You preserved your purchasing power, and then when the shit hits the fan, you're gonna make 5 extra money. How did Tucker go off the deep end? He went to the left. For Christ's sake, he and Anthony Gregory and the rest of them all went back to, they all had a split over open borders. They became friggin', screaming meme open borders libertarians. They're just lefties. The Kavanaugh circus has damaged the Democrats' standing for the midterms. Absolutely. We've been in an expansion, a crappy expansion, and only Levi in nominal terms. That's the problem. It's nominal terms. And as Jeff Snyder at Alhambra Partners, who I do recommend you guys read, by the way, points out all the time, full employment and the employment numbers look great when you slash 17 million people off the unemployment rolls 1 month, and then, start looking at full capacity of the economy based on a new curve where you just, jettison 5% of the friggin' or 10% of the workforce. That's all. What do I mix with that whiskey? Nothing. That's actually, I'm not drinking whiskey, actually. Drinking coffee tonight. Ever tried getting on with Stepan Molyneux? I have been watching Stepan Molyneux on and off since the first time he made a video on YouTube. Remember, he used to write for Lou Rockwell back when I started writing for Lou Rockwell around 2005. Okay? Stepan Molyneux used to be a really good principled libertarian. Now he's a white nationalist. And he's insane. And I can't watch him anymore. I can't. Still interested in your comments on the Russian shootdown. Yes, we're getting to it. Thank you for reminding me. I'd say we're in a hidden, yeah, in a sense, yes. I mean, the economy shrank after 2008, and it really hasn't recovered since then. It's still smaller than it was after 2008. Certainly it is in Europe, and ours isn't much better. No, he's a white nationalist. Go watch his 20-minute review of The Last Jedi and then tell me that that guy can only see the destruction of the white race and white culture. Because a libertarian would have seen Luke taking the lightsaber and throwing it over his shoulder and going, yay for nonviolence. And he went, he's throwing the symbol of white European culture away, male white European culture away. See? He's a fucking retard now. He really is. It's not about whether you hate it or not. It's about how you read it. Luke throwing the lightsaber away was not him throwing away white culture, white European, the symbol of white European culture. It was him throwing away an instrument of violence. And if you watch The Last Jedi from a non-intervention, a non-violence, honestly, from a non-aggression principle perspective, The Last Jedi is brilliant. I probably did miss your question. So to clarify, go ahead and throw it up there again, Barnsold. I did not see it. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the problem. Everybody, a lot of people did. It wasn't an attack on masculinity. All the men in the movie were children that needed to be grown up a lot and quickly. And that's what women, and that's what constructive women are supposed to do. That's what Leia did. That's what Rose was doing for Finn. It's what Rey was doing for Luke. Right, every wise character, because at that moment in time, in the Star Wars universe, we didn't need adolescent men going and blowing shit up. The women were saying, we're gonna fucking die. Could you help us preserve what we have, please? And that's actually real. My wife and I have been over this movie at like a fine-tooth comb, and I'm gonna go over it one day on YouTube in grave detail and explain why. And I think that the reaction about this reaction that the movie is misandrous and anti-male is nonsense. It's actually taking characters like Poe, underdeveloped, and Finn, who's a boy, and trying to make them understanding, make them go through adolescence and go through and become men ready to lead a revolution. They weren't men ready to lead a revolution. They were men willing to throw their lives away for nothing. And that's not going to protect anything. I'm not out there on this one, dude. That's exactly what the movie... I've watched the movie 11 times. How many times have you watched it? Slapped Poe. Come on. It's not a stream I'm going to do. I'm actually going to do it as a full-on, like, text. But absolutely not. Yeah, Molino. I agree with North on 60. Molino has become a white male right-wing SJW. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, I'm dead serious. You need to take the political blinders off for a minute and watch The Last Jedi, because Rian Johnson is not a fucking screaming leftist. He's not. Go watch his other movies. He's not. The man made an entire story arc in The Last Jedi to give us Smedley Butler's War is a Racket as the theme. Leftists don't say this. Only the libertarians say that. All right, back to the Russians. Oh, come on. You guys know what happens when somebody challenges me on Star Wars. You know what happens. Everybody who's calling The Last Jedi crap is wrong. The Last Jedi is brilliant. Watch it without blinders on. Watch it carefully. It's a beautiful movie. All right, next. Unbelievable. All right. All you're looking at is the trappings. You're not looking at the movie. You're not looking at as a story structuralist. You don't see the story. All you can see is the surface, and you can't see the story for what it is. And you can't see it. And it's a shame. All right. You can like make fun of me all you want. I'm so fucking right about this. 20 years from now, you're all going to be going, dude, The Last Jedi is brilliant. Just like everybody complained about the fucking Empire Strikes Back when we were 13. Because we did, by the way. All right. And you probably did post it again, and it probably did because I got off. So go for it. Go give it to me again. I'm going to talk about Russia's shoot down, IL-20, and all of that stuff. Yes, we're going to go back to geopolitics. Sorry, user 13. Let's go back to geopolitics because we got about 10, 15 minutes left. So back in March, when Russia sold most of the U.S. Treasury bonds, they apparently moved some of them to Euroclear and the Caymans. But how does this keep the U.S. government from blocking the sale of these bonds? That's a good question. When the Russians sold most of the, they apparently moved some of them to Euroclear and the Caymans. Yes, that we know. But how does this keep the U.S. government from blocking the sale of these bonds? It doesn't. Oh, because they're not under U.S. jurisdiction at that point. If they're outside of the dollar-based, the dollar banking, if they're outside of the banking system where those banks report to the United States, then they can still sell. They can still sell those bonds. Okay. That's what's going to happen, by the way, with the special purpose vehicle that's coming with the from the EU and from the EU. Right? They're going to build a special purpose vehicle which will allow everybody to act as an intermediary, to allow companies to do business with Iran through a quasi-governmental intermediary that will transact outside the dollar system, that will ensure that the transactions are kept clear of the United States, so the United States can't do anything about it. All they can do is go, well, I know you're moving money, so we sanction you. And we invoke the Magnitsky Act and CATSA, and we just sanction everybody else from doing, and then seize all their assets. I got news for you. You do that with everybody, and all you're doing is fomenting the sovereign debt crisis. Now you're just trolling me. Let it go. We're not talking about The Last Jedi anymore. So, yeah. So, is that a good answer for you? I hope so. All right. And so, there was a question about Russia. IL-20 shoot down. I think you guys wanted to talk about that for a little bit. They will. The Russians have already moved in. Yeah, they already moved in S-300s. You guys know that, right? You know that we talked about on Friday, and has not been mentioned much by anybody anywhere outside of TASS, that Foreign Minister Lavrov sat down with Kissinger on the sidelines of the UN. I wonder what they talked about. I don't have much of a worry about the situation in Syria at this point. Okay. Oh, I think what we guys wanted to talk about, was the French shoot down, right? You wanted more clarification on why I thought the French shot down the IL-20. It could be a while, Rocket Man, before they're forced out of Syria. The U.S., that is. Okay, so saw a great article today on Fort Russ. Do not have the link, but it's in my Twitter feed. So you scroll back through my Twitter feed and you'll find it. Going over and calling bullshit on the official story from the Russians that the Israelis used the IL-20 as a radar mule, and then shot down the IL-20 while the Israeli jets escaped. That story is nonsense. And Fort Russ went over the numbers, the distance that an S-200 rocket could, what its maximum flight time was, what its flight speed is, where the IL-20 was, and and all of this stuff. And it was impossible for them to shoot it down, for that thing to have shot it down. It's impossible. So what that means is that Putin is covering for either France or the Brits shooting down that plane. We know that the Brits had planes in the area, and we know that the French fired missiles. And that means that Putin is again continuing to play the long game. And that he turned a potentially ugly false flag incident into an opportunity for him to win. Because then he got to blame Israel. Because no one else, he couldn't blame anybody else without starting World War III. So then he got to blame Israel. Israel had to take the heat because Israel had to take the heat. And now Putin gets to shut down the airspace. And Trump is not saying anything about it whatsoever. Yeah, Barnes Older, I think that's fair. That yeah, I mean, it's not like the U.S. doesn't know where what Treasury bonds were sold to whom and when, but at the end of the day, the Russians can sell their bonds. If they haven't been seized, they can get sold. Someone will buy them. Kissinger is 93. What do you see as the long-term alignment of the Middle East? I see a long-term. I see a grand bargain within a year or so on peace in the Middle East. Iran will not be a hegemon. Multipolar world. The United States will start pulling out eventually. So Trump's silence on the entire affair, on the on Russia implementing a no-fly zone, not just over Western Syria, but Israel, Lebanon, and the Eastern Mediterranean, or the Eastern Mediterranean. You guys have to understand. No, they have not attacked Syria since the IL-20 incident. Bruce Alexei, not at all. Trump is silent because he knows it's the right way to stand everybody down. That's why at the US at the UN General Assembly he told everybody that he prefers a two-state solution. He said Israel doesn't want a two-state solution, but so what? And he said that. No one's going to be happy about it, but that's the right solution. He said it. He's going to get it eventually. But he's got to get everybody to come around. How about Iran shooting 6 rockets into Syria 3 miles away from a U.S. base? I thought it was ballsy, but then again, we had the MEK stage a massacre during an Iranian parade, and we just tried to take out Soleimani again the other day. How will a grand bargain look? In broad strokes, the U.S. is a guarantor of Israel and Saudi Arabia's behavior. Russia as a guarantor of Hezbollah and Iran, with Russia effectively acting as custodian over a slightly less balkanized Syria, which slowly over time will become reintegrated, but not I don't think at this point anytime soon. Not until Trump arrests everybody that's opposing him, and he doesn't have the resources to do that right now. Israel and Saudi Arabia. Who is over Turkey? Well, effectively Russia is. Will China be actively involved in Syria, meaning their military? Maybe. I think this deal between Putin and Erdogan was a last-ditch effort for Erdogan to get control of his proxies in Idlib, and if he doesn't get them under control, then Putin and Assad are going to take care of them. And the Chinese, possibly. How much of a guarantor are we with the neocon Zionist influence in our politics? It's a good question. How much of Syria does Assad actually control at the moment? Everything west of the Euphrates River except for Idlib. Will Russia let Turkey keep the territory in Syria? No. Erdogan's going to try and push for it. He's going to keep playing both sides against the middle to try and get it, but it's not going to happen. But Russia will look the other way while Erdogan pushes the Kurds back. I don't know, Bruce. I don't have a good answer for that. When can Russia, Syria move against Idlib? I think it's going to be a little while, but it's definitely a temporary thing. Lavrov has never said anything other than it's a temporary arrangement. Dreams of a neo-Ottoman empire, and he wants the Kurds removed from the current Turkish border. The Kurds have an option, which is make nice with Syria. The United States is doing everything imaginable to stop that from happening. What is the reason that Russian and Chinese are accumulating so much gold? Because they want to be seen as, they want their currencies to be seen as safe haven assets in the future. And the way you do that is you undergird your foreign and also to de-dollarize their reserves by diversifying their reserves. It makes people, again, investors like boring. Gold is boring. So if you're looking to attract people to your bond markets, having a sizable chunk of gold, along with good banking over regulation and a strong and improving rule of law, and go look at Russia's state of the World Bank statistics. They're doing very well in that respect, in those respects. That's what Putin's been working on tremendously. Do you see regime change in Iran happening in the next 8 years, or is the regime too long? 8 years is too long, and there's too much to be happening between now and then, Hannity. I can't answer that question for you. What will be the final outcome of the Skripal case? Will it be the end of the Tories? That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know. What do you think about the new Kosovo escalation and Serbian president calling on Russia to help them out? Business as usual? I don't really have a good answer for that either. I'm getting a little tired here. We're past the 1 hour mark. Will the Middle East ever not have foreign overseers meddling in everything? At least for right now, no. Not until everything calms down. And not as long as Netanyahu is the only viable political option in Israel with its 200 nukes. What's the chance of U.S. waging war in Iran? Do Iran and Russia really see eye to eye? On many issues, yes. On Eurasian integration, absolutely. On poking a snake with Israel, no. When all the oil is pumped out, they will have peace. Well, ain't gonna be peace anytime soon because the world has got a fucking shit ton of oil. Yeah, listen to cynical skeptic. He knows more about Syria than I ever will. I'm asking him for advice on Serbia. We're at 38. That's wow. This is I think we hit 40 the other day. But this has been good. Why does Iran threaten to annihilate Israel? Because Israel threatens to annihilate Iran? All right, well. Really? Levi? I beg to differ. Netanyahu has been made it abundantly clear through the his minions at AIPAC and here in the United States and all the neocons and everything else that they would be very happy to wipe Iran off the map. It's not that I don't believe in peak oil. It's that I don't believe that we're anywhere near it. That's the problem. All right. I just think that there's way too much oil out there. So, and by the time we get to a point when oil supplies become really tight to the point and expensive, we'll have some other version of, we'll have something else like, thorium batteries or some other thing will show up on the market. We're really close to a breakthrough energy production anyway, and it will go back to being used as a precursor for materials, which is what it should be used for anyway. So, all right, it's looking like I'm gonna have to start running. I'm probably I think it's past 9 o'clock, that or 9:10. That means my wife is gonna want YouTube back, so I'm gonna have to go. So we're at 1 hour and 5. You guys take care. You have a great evening. We've if you like what you heard tonight, even the Last Jedi stuff, give a like and subscribe down below. Tweet this out. Let everybody know what's going on. Promote the channel as best you can. That'd be great. Make sure you've got notifications turned on so that when I do go live at Friday nights at 8:30 and Monday nights at 8, plus or minus 5 to 10 minutes, you get the notification. You guys have a great night. You take care. We'll talk soon and keep your stick on the ice.